Welcome everyone to this encounter where MVL takes on Vishy Anand. It's the Upgrad Mumba Masters versus the Ganges Grandmasters. E4 by MVL and Vishy plays the Caro Kann. He played it against Nepo in the last game and he plays it once again. But this time MVL goes for the advanced variation and Vishy plays this very interesting Gambit line. D takes c5, he puts his pawn up to e6. Vishy must surely believe in this opening to play it. He takes the pawn on c5 and MVL now can attack the bishop with b4. That is exactly what he does. The bishop can now drop back to b6, but Vishy goes back to e7. Knight comes out to f3 and he plays a5, hitting this structure over here. MVL pushes the pawn. This does weaken the c5 square because now it's no longer protected by any of the white pawns. But Vishy first sort of disjoints these two pawns. c4 by MVL. Both the players making a lot of pawn moves. Vishy takes. Now a good move is to play queen c2. Don't trade the queens. Then bring your knight over to look at these weak squares. But MVL actually trades queens, which is not particularly a great idea. Vishy takes back, bishop takes here, and now knight comes out to d7. Although black is low on space, what black has got are these two squares for his knights. The knights can come here and no pawns can actually sort of disturb them. Bishop can come up to b7 now, pawn up to b6. The knight is developed, bishop b7. And MVL puts his bishop back. His plan is that his knight can actually jump into this weak square on d6. Vishy is unperturbed. He plays his knight out. Knight comes to c4 and now he can actually castle it out. So black in his limited space is doing very well. In fact, MVL must remain careful because each of black's piece is doing well. Now he's attacked here and the point is if you move the knight you might lose this pawn. No, it's actually defended. So Vishy can play that knight, but he instead goes bishop d5. The knight comes back, attacking the bishop here. And Vishy moves his knight to c5. You can notice how he's making use of these two squares very well. Bishop b2. And now he gets in with his knight there. Black's position, in fact, is very, very comfortable. Takes rook b1. And now you can bring your rook to the open file, which he does. He brings his rook to c8. Like how Vishy with the black pieces has got a very comfortable situation here. Knight comes up, asking Vishy if he wants to trade his knight on b3, which is actually very powerfully positioned. But Vishy goes in with his knight to c3, forking the two rooks. It has to be taken. The rook comes in and takes it here. Right now, MVL has 8 minutes while Vishy has 6 minutes on the clock. The knight jumps to c6. Now MVL's knight also well positioned, but look at Vishy. He brings his bishop to g5, pawn up to g3, trying to put the pawn on f4 and cut the bishop out, but the bishop gets into c1. Notice how the knight and the rook protect it. Rook d3, they trade, bishop takes, and now Vishy is going after the a pawn. He's a pawn up, but the problem is after bishop c2 the knight has to move. If it goes back to c5, which is what Vishy might be planning, yes he goes, he's defended this pawn, he is a pawn up in this position. MVL has seen a tactic, very nice move, takes here and plays his rook to a1. Knight comes into c3 and he picks up the bishop. The knight takes the pawn. Black is still a pawn up here, but after rook b3, he will lose it back. No, he goes rook a6, which is also a nice little move. Notice you can't go rook c8 because there's a knight e7 fork coming up. So he goes knight c7. Smart move. You want to bring your knight here. Rook takes d6, knight d5. But he gives a check, king up, king to the side, and now rook a7. Knight comes up to b5. And rook b7, in comes nd4. Very nice move by Vishy. He wants to defend the pawn and also threaten a fork. So MVL chops off the pawn, check, king here, knight e5, white now pawn down. Vishy is actually a pawn up, but he takes on c6, and now we are into a rook endgame with 4 versus 3, which is actually a draw. But Vishy might want to grind this a bit longer. There are good chances that he can continue playing. He brings his king up, rook to a2, rook b8, and now the rook comes to a7, and they agree to a draw. Vishy does not want to press here. But what a game by Vishy Anand. He absolutely gave MVL no chances in this entire matchup. He played accurately, and only in the opening MVL shouldn't have traded queens and should have kept it on, and he would have been doing much better there. But once he traded the queens, Anand, as you can see there, analyzing, he knows that he was in some trouble out of the opening, but then he played so well. He is in some scintillating form in this tournament, is Vishy. He's just playing the best players in the world and getting great positions against them. There is something to be said about Anand making a strong comeback. You know, he might want to play more tournaments. He might want to perhaps try and reach the candidates, and who knows, eventually the World Championship match, but maybe that's asking a bit too much from him. He's already creating the champions of tomorrow for India through his Westbridge Anand Chess Academy. For now, he's still analyzing. There's so much love and passion for chess, and MVL as well, analyzing it. And there you have it, a draw between these two amazing players from the Upgrad Mumbai Masters and the Ganges Grandmasters.